Hey guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male, and a big Happy New Year to all you guys around the planet. Hope you guys had a great time last night as well as having a good time today. Hopefully you guys have some goals in mind, things you want to work on this year, and definitely start today off on the right path. I definitely have my goals for the coming year. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. This is from a guy, sounds like I believe he's in his mid-40s or so. And he shares his story about how over the holidays, over Christmas, when he was spending time with his parents, and how he ended up finally, after all these years, putting his obnoxious, rude, narcissistic effing sister in her place, calling her on her BS finally. And that'd be a very good one to go over here, guys, as an example. I'm sure many of you guys watching this, probably every one of you has that one family member who every time you see him or her, want to smack them upside the head. They always start drama, they're always rude, they always have snide comments, probably jealous of you or someone else. You know what I'm talking about. Or you have multiple family members like that. And an example of a guy who finally had enough. And it's important, gentlemen, as men, that you can't tolerate BS from anyone. And there's a delicate balance of not tolerating BS, but also getting caught up in their drama, which they're dying to create. And this guy here, although he doesn't take her crap, finally, he does get caught up in it. And there's some lessons here on how to handle things better in the future. And again, going into the new year, I'm trying to help all you guys improve yourselves in some way. And you can't have drama in your life. You can't have the type of life you want in peace by getting caught up in drama. And there's people in your lives that are going to try to create it, and you got to either call them on it or cut them out of your lives. And this guy here, you see here, he's finally had enough. And it's interesting and I'm doing this because this happened over Christmas, like 3 days when he went to stay with his parents, and the parents want all the family to be together in spite of the drama. And it's important. It's crazy how you can grow up, have your own lives, but you get around family who you've known forever. And sometimes it's very easy to go back to that mindset of when you were all of a sudden 9 years old or something like that. And the same crap that people had on you back then sometimes can creep in and affect you, even though you're a grown-ass adult. It's very interesting, and the old dynamics come back regardless of where you are in life. Now, not everybody's like that, but it happens to many. So anyhow, guys, it's a longer one, but I thought it'd be entertaining, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to that have been involved with family BS and have that a-hole family member. Anyhow, it says here, Dear SSM, I've watched your channel for about the past year, and I've enjoyed hearing the many stories from your viewers. Much of what is addressed in this channel and others has helped me make sense of a number of experiences I've had, and it has contributed to my outlook on modern society after I broke up with my ex-fiancée in 2020. So thank you. Bro, if my channel and other channels have helped you get out of a bad relationship and help you see things differently, wonderful. I'm glad I could help. Many of the issues you discussed in this channel, nice guys, feminism, and women with masculine traits, all came to a head in my parents' home this past Christmas of 2023 in a huge fight. Well, a smart man doesn't fight and argue with women because it's going to turn to a drama fest. What he does is lay down the law, establishes boundaries, and if not, he walks away, or at least has words that scares the bejesus out of him. As I wrote this story, I wrote it with a sense of sadness of what has happened to my sister Noreen, who I will introduce shortly. Ordinarily, on this channel, I like to chime in and get a good laugh of the gals behaving badly, who eventually receive their consequences. In this case, I wrote my recollection events this past Christmas with the hope, hopefully futile as it may be, or however futile as it may be, that the destructive behaviors my sister has adopted will not condemn the rest of her life to one of turbulence and misery, and so many modern gals are now experiencing. So, while your sister's a giant a-hole, you truly don't want her to be like the rest of them, but guess what? She is like them. So a little bit about me and my family. I'll call myself Lance. I come from a nuclear family. I am the oldest of 3 kids. I consider myself a white-collar worker with a blue-collar attitude. For the longest time, I grew up as the nice guy and only had the modest success in dating later in life after I began teaching at universities and community colleges. Probably my social status has something to do with it. Probably. What I tell you, the second a guy starts having resources and establishing himself, that's when gals start paying attention to him that wouldn't give him the time of day when he was younger, nice guy or not, right here. Don't tell me you're banging some of your students, dude. You don't need to jeopardize your career over that. Um, I was once engaged, but dropped out of the dating scene after breaking up with my now ex-fiancée. Currently, I have no significant other and no kids. And you're probably enjoying the peace and quiet. My brother, we will call him Roger, is an Iraq war veteran and an ex-paramedic, and his threshold for tolerating nonsense was lost long ago. When he was in the Navy, he was a true alpha Chad and a 5%er with women, given how many women he was romantically interested, women that were interested in him at the time. Given his understanding and experience with the gals and modern women with the current social dynamics in the West, Roger long ago decided he would never get married and would never bring kids into this world. A, I don't blame him for not wanting to get married, given how things are and how the laws are against the guys. And B, given obviously his experiences in war, I can certainly imagine and understand how not want to bring kids in this world. My sister, who I've introduced as Noreen, is a very intelligent lady who graduated at the top of her high school class and went on to multiple well-known prestigious universities. In other words, she has several degrees, probably in BS subjects like women's studies and gender studies and nonsense like that, and probably is up to her eyeballs in debt. She's very talented, but sadly has been dabbling in the FNS ideology, possibly as far back as the late 90s when she went to California, ding ding ding, for her undergrad. Over the years, Roger and I observed how she would become overly emotional in various situations, and tensions between us, the boys and our sister, progressively grew over the years. I like how you use the words progressively, because she probably went the progressive path. This tension was at the heart of what happened at my parents' house this past Christmas. More on that coming up. Maybe not a shocker to say this, but Noreen remains single, unmarried, and childless at age 43, and has few or no boyfriend prospects currently. Well, there's a fucking surprise. Who wants to be around someone like that, as we're about to learn about Noreen's charming personality? No guy wants to be around some masculine, ball-busting, drama queen, argumentative, hard-headed effeminist. You want easy and smooth. Not someone's always debating politics in the world and the latest social injustice or some bullshit like they're challenging you or challenging your manhood. Who wants that? But of course, men are then labeled, oh, you just can't handle a strong woman. No, we can handle quite a bit. We just don't need that turmoil in our lives. About my mom and dad, they're about to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary this coming fall. Both are observant Christians with very strong family values. Well, thank God for that. It saddens me that they still have no grandkids to this day, though the thought of me becoming a passport bro is intriguing, so that story may not be finished. Well, be careful. A lot of guys swear on being the passport bros, and other ones have made it clear that those gals, they're looking to get out of their countries, and and women are women. But be careful. My mother is a truly devout traditional Catholic, one who attends masses on weekdays and weekends, studies scripture, and goes above and beyond keeping with scripture in how she conducts herself in raising her family and helping friends and relatives. Cool, that's great. She was also a stay-at-home mom and led the household in raising her kids while my father worked and took a more passive approach in raising the kids. More on to that in a moment. Passive approach, which meant that mom probably ran the show, which is not a good place to be, as you are well aware. My father is one of the smartest and most honorable men I've ever known. I've learned aspects of how the world truly works from him that I never learned in school, and his advice over the years of how to conduct oneself with civility and with dignity, along with his understanding of how one needs to add value to others, was some of the best advice I ever received. Well, that's great and all, but if your dad is a naturally passive guy, passive people tend to avoid conflict when one needs to stand up for themselves. Okay, I'm all for not directly trying to create drama and pick fights and everything, but passive people tend to let things slide when they shouldn't. That's a problem, and they tend to enable bad behavior. Enablers, that's the worst thing you can do with a bully. Dad worked his whole life as a lab technician at a government facility, and his genuine appreciation of doing the grunt work, coupled with only having a bachelor's degree and thus a lower salary, led him to survive many layoffs as he remained employed there for over 50 years. My father provided a stable income, which we kids took for granted our whole lives. Well, you shouldn't have, but then again, you were kids, but now you know. All that being said, my father's biggest flaw was that he was a nice guy his whole life, from what I could tell. When he said passive, I knew he was a nice guy. Dad was laid back and let my mom handle most matters relating to the kids. Mom would tackle all aspects of parenting on her own if she needed to, while my father provided stability with his 9-to-5 job. Dad would go to work and come home in the evening, and if there was a problem with the kids, he would only get involved if Mom felt overwhelmed. I believe that my mother's devotion to a Christian lifestyle and her true desires of looking to build loving relationships was why she always overlooked Dad's nice guy persona, whereas a lesser woman in modern-day America, I suspect, likely would have strayed. My parents are truly loyal to each other and to their kids. That's great, and I truly hope that's true. Now, if your dad's the one working, and your mom's the one that's a stay-at-home mom, it is her job to do the stuff around the house. The cooking, cleaning, grocery shopping, ironing, laundry, time with the kids. But even though he's working, he still needs to help out a bit and certainly be involved with the kids. But the bulk of it should be on her, but he should also help too. Thing is, you said your dad was the nice guy type, and I'm all for someone who's a good guy. But nice guy we know means typically a pushover, and there's degrees to that. And it can't be that way. That said, Dad's nice guy persona of letting Mom take charge of her boys yielded problems, as my brother Roger and I discovered during our adolescent years. Dad maintained his laid-back approach as Roger and I began to endure school bullying. Dad would mostly disregard the issue while Mom would take charge of the matter. Wrong. Smack to your dad. No, when it comes to the problem is your mom ran the show and you look to her for guidance, and that's where your boys need their father to take charge and set masculine examples, which you said he was a nice guy, so good luck there, and to teach you to stand up for yourselves and to fight if necessary and all that. Mothers don't want boys to fight. They want them to tell the teacher. And it doesn't work on the playground or at the bus stop or on the bus or anything like that. Dad's advice would only be pretend it doesn't bother you, and then they'll leave you alone. Smack, dear Dad. That's terrible advice. That means, yes, when it gets old and stops being fun, some people will eventually stop bothering you, but a lot of bullies won't. They'll take that not doing anything as weakness. Bad example, Dad. He means well, but bad example. His advice apparently worked for him growing up, but it failed horribly for Roger and myself. I myself bullied my two siblings when we were growing up, regrettably, but Dad never scared me straight despite showing flashes of anger, and so I would continue. Dad's approach for ignoring and avoiding conflict was a similar approach he took when he tried to disregard the brewing tension that was building between Noreen and her brothers, and I believe it contributed to what happened this past Christmas. You're damn right it did. It enabled her behavior. And since your mom ran the show and your mom was running the family, Noreen took after her, except not her good qualities. The parental dynamics in my parents' household, I suspect, are why, looking back in hindsight, my brother and I were awkward kids. Effeminate boys and pushovers in both middle school and high school. And both of us had to come to our own in growing up to be men. That's exactly what happened. And that's what's happening so much today, because boys don't have the right example. They have the mom, and while the mom fulfills her role, she can't do everything a dad does, period. Boys need both. My brother began hitting the weights after high school, determined to no longer be a pushover, and joined the Navy after. He put me in check with my bullying antics, and they stopped almost immediately. See? And smack for you for bullying your brother. You were picking on the younger siblings because it was easy, and that's bullshit. I'm glad you know that now, but not fucking cool, dude. And I'm glad your brother built up his body and then put you in your place. When I was in my teens and 20s, I was overtly emotional with angry outbursts and being selfish, and there were times I felt completely emasculated. In hindsight, I was behaving very much in a similar manner as Noreen behaves today. My struggles during that time period in the mid-90s to 2000s correspond to struggles with deep anger and resentment, being romantically undesirable, befriending a violent alcoholic, engaging in hurting myself, and even contemplating offing myself. Thankfully, coming out of these struggles, I was forced to grow a thicker skin to learn to better adapt to the harsh realities of life and to better conduct myself. Well, good. I'm glad you got past all that. Meanwhile, my sister Noreen did her undergrad in California and began traveling the world afterwards, holding various positions at different companies and startups. So, she's done well for herself, but she's a a-hole, narcissistic a-hole, and an effeminist. Roger and I long suspected, however, that the social dynamics Noreen had been exposed to her whole life, her interactions with her parents, her exposure to modern Western culture, Her prescriptions to several different medications and her associations with the people she would hang around at work and social gatherings led to Noreen adopting many of the destructive personality traits we now see in the modern feminist women today. Well, if she worked at a lot of startups, then she's obviously in the tech field, and no doubt out west, and they are typically very liberal operations, so she's around people like that. It says that brings us to Christmas disaster 2023. So we were building up to everything, guys. Roger had already experienced a number of tense incidents with Noreen, going back to when they were both living in California in the early 2000s. So at the time, they were no doubt in their early 20s. Roger's experience in the military and on the streets of various American cities as a paramedic had ultimately led him to a place where he no longer wished to be around people if they cause any unnecessary stress. I don't blame your brother. Throughout the previous 10 to 15 years, there would almost always be family drama during family get-togethers, and Noreen would almost always be in the middle of them. Well, there's a fucking surprise. And because your dad's passive attitude, and your dad never probably checked her, and you guys never checked her because of the family dynamics and all that, you can't tolerate that crap. From the get-go, should have been like, we're getting together as a family, and you're going to cut this fucking bullshit. Right now, you leave this bullshit at the door because we're going to have a good time with our parents. They don't deserve this. And if she can start drama, either you simply don't attend anymore, but you don't appease her by letting her just do this stuff and not let it happen, which they did for so long. Roger had finally had enough, and he decided he did not want to be around Noreen when she would arrive for Christmas. Roger therefore had planned to visit me and my folks on Saturday, December 23rd, and then leave the house before Noreen would fly in that night. Roger was the smartest guy in this whole situation. He says, I'm not dealing with this shit. I'm done with her. Fuck her. All that. But then again, for your parents, because your parents want to have their children there and everything, and you're doing it for them, you're going to do it regardless. And that's where you have to handle things accordingly with your wacko, a-hole, narcissistic effing sister. Before he left the house, Roger did bring us Christmas gifts, including Noreen's. Being the ex-military man that he is, Roger told us that when he went traveling recently, he visited an ex-Marine who ran a knife shop. Roger presented to each of us knives he had personally sharpened with our knees engaged in the blades. After dinner and well wishes, Roger left for his apartment some 20 minutes away, and Noreen arrived from her flight shortly afterwards. Probably as she's getting off the plane, you can hear like the Imperial March when Darth Vader would get off the fucking Imperial shuttle and Return of the Jedi, or whatever. I was happy to see Noreen, and although she was fighting a cold, we warmly greeted each other. I was cautiously hoping we would get through this holiday without any arguments or blow-ups as we did in years past. Yeah, fat chance. Roger already knew what would happen. He'd seen this movie too many times and was smart enough to check out early. As for myself, I was familiar with Noreen's antics in years past, and I decided early on I would no longer enable them. Well, good for you. It took long enough, but I think living life as long as you have and probably finding my content, he said enough isn't enough. Nonetheless, I didn't wish to create unnecessary tension. Noreen at one point early on asked if Roger's absence at the house for Christmas was because of her, and I replied, I don't know. I lied, but did not wish to interject myself in that situation. I would have said why. Just a couple hours prior, Noreen and I had a heated argument over Thanksgiving when Noreen fired what she thought was an insult in my direction. So you're just fighting just a few weeks ago over Thanksgiving. She can't, again, you're with your parents, and you want to have your parents are in their 80s. I know you mentioned that. And she's starting bullshit. You can't tolerate that. She said to him, have fun being single the rest of your life. In response, I fired back, if all women around the world were like you, I'd want to stay single the rest of my life. Well, as amusing as that was, she's behaving like a fucking 13-year-old. Noreen was shocked by my response and carried on for some time about how hurtful my words were. Later that afternoon, smack coming, Noreen wanted me to apologize for my comment, and I gave it to her. So she's continuing on the drama. Your brother is a smart one, saying, I'm not going to subject myself to this shit. Noreen also apologized, but never owned up to the fact that my snide comments towards her came as a response to her initial comment. Well, of course not. I honestly did not realize Noreen would be as overly sensitive to my comment as she was. I thought if she could dish it out, she'd surely be able to take it, but I was wrong. People that dish things out usually cannot take it. I was also sorry that I had created more trouble for myself by taking the bait. It was too easy in hindsight, and replying to Noreen's silly comment in the manner that I did. Yes, you're the dumbass that got roped into her shit. And that's basically how family gatherings for the past 10 years would generally go. Noreen would initiate or be in the middle of an argument. I or Roger would eventually respond in some manner. Noreen would feel hurt and desire an apology. Noreen would eventually apologize herself for any misunderstandings, but would never address the root or why she would always escalate tension amongst us. Because she's a fucking drama queen. Because she likes it. She gets off on it. It's her. She gets to have power over you guys. And you guys all got roped into it. And either you handle things saying, I'm not going to associate myself with you anymore, as your brother's doing, or you're putting her in her fucking place. I mean, really putting her in her place. Ahead of time. There's going to be no bullshit over the holidays at our parents' house. They're old. They don't need this stress and drama. You're going to cut that fucking shit. Basically scaring the shit out of her. Not waiting for her to provoke a situation. But at least when she provokes a situation, you're not caving anymore, and that's important. And she'll think twice about that. My parents would try to delicately work with Noreen while still welcoming her at their home, rather than demand that she and her escalation of tension and that she de-escalate any tension in that household. Yeah, your parents don't want any drama, so they're placating her, which is the worst fucking thing to do. My parents, if I started a bunch of drama, even to this day, they would yell at me. So the general understanding at our family gathering was that if Noreen didn't get things her way, there would be more drama. The parents would tolerate it, and Roger and I wouldn't hear the end of it. See? And they're enabling her behavior. They're appeasing a bully. It doesn't work that way. As I mentioned, my dad would try to avoid such conflicts and was very laid back about these things. Your dad may be a great guy, but in that regard, he was a pussy and behaving like one. And people take advantage. If your dad would have laid down the law early on, this wouldn't happen in his household. As an elderly man now in his 80s, my father's behavior has now become somewhat understandable. But apologizing and appeasing Noreen seemed to be the only way to try to keep the peace around the house for years. Nope, terrible idea. The Thanksgiving incident was just one example. There are a number of other examples I could go through. You don't need to, I get the point. Your sister should also be aware that your parents are in their 80s, and I'm sure on medication, and need a peaceful environment. And in their old age, and they could go at any time, want to see their children who, in spite of how she behaves, they love, and she ought to respect that and start a bunch of fucking drama. But she's a narcissist, and an a-hole, and an effinist, and that's all going to be intertwined, all this shit. Can't tolerate it, guys, and I keep saying, this is why I'm doing this video, to make this point. It says this time I wasn't going to play Noreen's game, and I made it clear to my mother early on. Still, we had no idea what was about to unfold. And he says here, round one. On Christmas Eve, on Sunday, December 24th, my mother was busily preparing our Christmas Eve dinner in the kitchen. I'd offered help throughout the day, but she had mostly declined, and the preparation went pretty routine for her. That early afternoon, I was watching Sunday football and was already feeling the calories piling up from the last couple of days of eating lots of food. I was trying to get motivated to do a Murph workout. My folks had the pull-up bar, which hangs on one of the doorways whenever I'm home, that I could get at least 1 or 2 workouts during the holiday. Well, bro, you can do pull-ups all day. That's not gonna do much to all the Christmas cookies and apple pie. Enjoy your Christmas cookies and apple pie, and then just get back on the regular healthy eating habits after the holidays. You can do pull-ups all day. You're just going to have very sore back and biceps and forearms, but still your stomach's going to be the same. But I get it. You want to do your workout. On this afternoon, I was feeling lethargic and trying to get worked up to go knock out a workout. In the meantime, I was hearing arguing from the kitchen between Noreen and my mother. So she's starting shit not just with you, but also your mom. Fucking bitch. I thought to myself, oh, here we go. It was only a matter of time. And was thankful I wasn't in the middle of it. Yet. Noreen apparently was arguing on how my mother could mend fences with her siblings, who were politically polar opposites of her. My mom was already busy trying to prepare Christmas dinner for us and had enough on her mind. The argument broke down when my mom used some choice words to let my sister know she was agitated and wanted to be left alone. Your mom's busily preparing Christmas dinner, which is a lot of fucking work, and she's in her 80s, and your sister's starting a bunch of BS. It's not her business. Sounds like a know-it-all, empowered effing gal to me, who just likes drama. Then the main event started. Noreen came up to me while I was watching TV and minding my own business and asked that I help provide emotional support for her after coming off the heated argument with our mother. Provide emotional support to her? Okay. she's been living in California too long. Does she need her little safe space and coloring books and Play-Doh? Remember during 2016 those stories about those campuses in California with the safe spaces on campus and coloring books and Play-Doh and other bullshit? Our enemies are laughing their asses off at our country. I want to know part in the squabbling, and seeing that Noreen's arguments with Mom would always seem to be petty and would often be hashed out later, my response was simply, you guys need to hash it out like adults and talk it out. With Noreen, however, she never took no for an answer, because you guys always caved to her bullshit. Noreen repeated her case, pleaded with me that I hear her out, and I again provide a similar response. I'd say, Noreen, you're a 40-something-year adult, many degrees, act like a fucking adult, and get the fuck out of my face. I'm watching goddamn football with Dad. You're not going to start this shit during the holidays. This is important to Mom and Dad. And if there's an issue, you're going to have a major problem with me. Guaranteed. Noreen once again would not listen to what I was saying. This time she spoke in an excited and raised tone of voice, practically demanding I conform to her wishes. Typical feminist. I began to talk over and simply said, I don't care. It's between you guys. It doesn't concern me. Or you got a problem with Mom? Take your fat ass out of here and go ahead and enjoy your Merry Christmas and bother somebody else. That's when Noreen was initially stunned, began melting down, and turned her attempts of insulting me. So you weren't going to play her a game, and immediately she's getting loud in attitude and starts insulting you. Shocker. She began complaining, seemingly a million miles an hour, how I was selfish, that whenever she would talk about her problems on our family WhatsApp channel, I would always talk about myself and not show her care for her or her problems, because she wants to always be the center of attention. That's what narcissists do. She went on like this for a few seconds. She was starting to raise hell, and between being agitated and amused, I finally had enough and responded by calling her a narcissist to her face. So, on the one hand, you don't want to get roped into the drama. On the other hand, there's times you have to fight. Problem is happening at the parents' house when they want to have a nice Merry Christmas with the kids. Your sister needs to be called out and put in her place, and that's good you did that. But drama ensues. Noreen's jaw dropped again. Took a second, and that's when Noreen really went off. She proceeded to yell and scream while using the F-bomb and calling me an a-hole. Well, if a woman calls you an a-hole, you're doing something right. My parents both finally came in to try to calm Noreen down, to bring peace while she continued going off, but I wasn't having any of it. As Noreen continued to yell, I stuck my fingers in my ears and said, are you done? I asked her this several times while she persistently screamed and cussed me out despite the best efforts of my mom. Scream. This is a grown-ass woman in her 40s. Is she off her fucking meds? You see what all these years of appeasement does? Right? She's losing her mind that someone's not taking her crap. My mother was furious with both of us. I suspect her anger with me was due to not trying to overtly placate Noreen, seeing that Noreen was seemingly incapable of calming down and controlling her emotions. Yeah, there you go. And, you know, the more they placate her, the worse it gets. Nope, not this time. And I'm good for you for not backing down. But just a speech to her at the door would have been better. And this is why Roger didn't avoid all this shit. As Noreen continued to scream and yell cuss bombs, at that point I said to my mother, you know, you can throw her out on the sidewalk if you want to. Noreen's jaw dropped again, and then walked up to me shaking with rage while I was lying on the couch, pretending she was going to square up against me like a dude ready to fight. Sounds like an FNS to me. She also did this to me on Thanksgiving while also threatening assault, although she didn't. This time I simply said, Noreen, don't pull that shit. She said, playing dumb, what? And then sat down at my mother's request. As my folks tried to regain control of the matter, Noreen went up to a level 11, absolute screaming hell. Your sister needs to be fucking put in some kind of hospital. She's nuts. Her emotions, her feelings, the cold she was suffering, cuss words, her being the victim, as you can imagine. I honestly felt awful. Noreen was clearly in great psychological distress over something that would have been, and should have been, a bunch of nothing if she just allowed things to calm down after arguing with my mom and not succumb to her impulses. No one, I guarantee, has ever checked her in her life. This is what you got. I was never trying to deliberately antagonize her, a sentiment I would be repeating countless times in the next 2 days. The fact that I denied her request over something so petty, and it was causing this much pain for her, was honestly sad and shocking to me. Even more sad was that my elderly parents were forced to put up with it. Your parents could have told her to get the hell out at any time. I'm not letting your parents get away with this shit. And another part of the reason that she is the way she is today. But they're in their 80s. You respect your elders, but for goodness sake, Mom and Dad. Eventually, after Noreen got all out of her system, for a few minutes, my mother asked I could room myself and go into the family guest rooms, which I did. You leave? How about fucking Noreen leaves, Mom? God's sakes. This is when you, as my friend who's telling the story in your 40s, you become truly the adult. You're in your parents' house, and you have to respect your parents, and it's their house, and all that, and they're the elders, but you need to take charge. And I'm glad you're not tolerating Noreen's shit. But, no, I'm not going to leave the room, Mom. Such and such, Noreen will leave the room. Or better yet, she leaves now because of the shit she's pulling, which you know she's doing. My sister's parting shots to me, similar to Thanksgiving, were, "You'll never find a wife." To which I replied, "You assume that it's a negative." She retorted with, "Maybe you'll find a husband then." The thought crossed my mind of replying with, "My chances of finding a husband are better than yours." But thankfully, I wasn't fast enough. One of the things to this day that bewilders me, my mother was most upset about the whole tirade, was that I called Noreen a narcissist. Noreen's behavior truly was narcissistic, and as I told my mother later, I didn't say that to get a rush out of Noreen. I said it because I believed it to be the case. My mother apparently disagreed. No, she's a narcissist, 100%. And he says that's the end of round one. And he says here, "It felt wonderful and refreshing to have already eaten a lot over the last couple of days, and having gone through the earlier commotion, alas, when I got home, round two begins." Now I'm going to stop it right there, guys, because this is getting long, and continue in a couple hours how this continues on with his a-hole sister. Now some of you may be thinking, I don't want to hear this drama with her. She's an a-hole, blah, blah, blah. But it's important to go over this, guys, to show this guy doesn't back down. And there are times, guys, you cannot back down. And this story is a perfect example of what happens when people do back down and placate people that are a-holes, drama queens, and all that. This sister should never ever be invited to set foot in that house if she behaves like that. But the parents enable her behavior, and they were passive, particularly the dad. In a house where the dad laid down the law, this would never happen. And this guy also let it go for years. He's done. So it's very important you don't allow that to happen. So that's why I'm doing this story. And of course, it's the holidays that took place during the holidays, and we all can relate to family assholes. You can't allow this shit to happen. And you'll see how this whole thing plays out. And I think at the end of the story, his sister will think twice about some of her bullshit in the future. So stay tuned in a couple hours, and I'll continue on where I'm leaving off here. See you then.